distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, and most of all, friends. It's really a wonderful opportunity for us to reconnect again with one another. There are some folks who have not seen for the last, I was going to say 10 years, but I reflect back and say, no, actually it's 20 years, not just the COVID years, but really far more. And I hope that you are all also reconnecting with old friends and making new friends this morning. One of the things that touched me a lot with Madam President's speech was the word collaborations. I think one of the things that as charities we will rely on one another because others rely on us and we're sort of interdependent. So before further ado, can I please introduce my esteemed speakers this morning who joined me? Hsieh, Agarwal. I tell you, when I first was talking to him, he was in this beautiful, he was in a beautiful sanctuary. He was going to do some reflections, I think, on life. And we were also envious where he was. He was in Tasmania and having his own retreat. Achal currently chairs the World Wild Fund for Nature. It used to be known as the World Wildlife Fund. So sometimes I get a little bit confused, so he says, it's okay, it's a new name. And more importantly, he actually sits as a non-executive director for AMCO and SATS. His experience in ESG and WWF, he has implemented many sustainable and green initiatives, and certainly with his wealth of experience, he augurs well for us with regards to the topic on diversity as well. So today, both in terms of companies as well as corporates, he is everywhere, is what I'm going to say. And someone who is very familiar with to all of us is Denise Phua. She is the person that we go to for autism, and if you like, she actually has put Singapore on the world stage on autism, to my mind. President of the Autism Resource Centre. She's also a member of Parliament for Jalan Besar, Mayor of Central District, and best known for her advocacy of people at risk of being left behind, frequently standing up for the disabled and Singaporeans with low skills and low income backgrounds. I only had one question for Denise here actually, was do you sleep at night? Do you get any sleep? Because she seems to be so busy.
Not enough.
Not enough, yeah. See, I figured. Thank you for being here with us as well. Another well-known figure in both the corporate and community space is Hsieh Phua. He is our role model and inspiring leader because he helms both sides. He chairs our National University of Singapore, our National University Health System, or rather affectionately known as NUHS, and the Singapore Business Federation, that actually needs no introduction. He has 2,000 at least, or 17,000 companies, 20,000 companies.
It's the foundation of
It's a foundation,
SBF.
okay, but still, there are something like 20,000 companies that is the foundation. So it's the charity arm of SBF. He's also currently the member of the National Research Foundation, Innovation and Enterprise Council, and he's certainly very active sector and co-founded many charities, especially in the area of mental health. So can we have applause for our three learned panelists? As Madam President started off this, her first opening remarks was about the fact that the pandemic threw a spanner in the works for many of us in IPC and charity space. Even Boon Chai, in his opening speech, talked about the confluence of many things, whether it's the Ukraine-Russia war, to China-US issues, to now pandemic. These are all posing lots of issues, not just for corporates, but definitely for charities. And as I reflected on the results that came out, I wasn't surprised with the fact that fundraising is probably one of the top issues that's facing a lot of charities. I will ask the panel their reflections or their views on some of these things. But maybe we'll start off with the pandemic, and maybe the question is about the lessons that we can take from the pandemic, and as we come out of pandemic, what do you see? What are the key changes that you need to make in your charities and IPCs? Do you see anything that, from your experience, that we need to do to move forward? And it's a lady's first question, so I'm going to ask Denise while Phua and Achal think about their answers. So, Denise?
You stop me when you want me to stop talking. I think one of the impact on the COVID, the pandemic, is really, of course, the introduction of, or the rapid rise of the use of technology. And I think in many of the charities, this is not a major investment for us, but indeed it has changed a lot of lives and the way we run charities. So some of our charities actually run education institutions like schools and so forth. And therefore, immediately the way we curate content, the way we deliver, the way we assess, evaluate outcomes and so forth has changed a lot. And that in itself has impacted the competencies of our staff as well. So for many years, I've been nagging, whether in Parliament or outside Parliament, that we really need to use technology a bit better. I come from Hewlett-Packard, so I'm very big on that. But it's very hard because it's like you have to carry on in what you do daily, and then you have to take on new roles and new knowledge and new skills acquisition. So it was very hard. But I think the pandemic, one of the good things about the pandemic is really changes the way that we all communicate, that we all curate content or design experiences and deliver our services. So that's one. But here also comes the other issues, and I noticed the poll that therefore it also requires new investments in staff competencies, new investments in the infrastructure and so forth. That is a challenge for at least many of the charities I know. And also in the bigger scheme of things, the economy therefore has also changed. You find that although there are many jobs, but a lot of jobs are not filled because they require different types of skills. Whether in IT or digitalization or in the care sector, the skills are different, so that has changed as well. And of course, other than financial resilience, the fact that there are also new themes coming up, mental health, for example, has a lot of impact on us, sustainability, and so these are new themes that also challenge us to try to do things a bit differently. So I would say that yes, definitely the pandemic has changed us a lot. And to me, if we think deeper, it's not going to be easy to overcome. The concept of mathematics, for example, instead of using dollars and cents and teaching, now I have to teach my children or the youth what's the meaning of cashless? And what's the concept behind just putting a tap on the machine and money or products and services can be acquired or obtained. So those are really big challenges, at least for the charities that I'm involved in.
Oh, thank you, Denise. You raised a very good point on technology that's not just changed the lives of the charities they're in, but I think all our lives have been changed and impacted. Phua, would you like to comment about the challenges that, as we emerge out of pandemic, what you see?
Well, for me, firstly, unlike, I think, many people, especially Denise, who doesn't sleep enough, I think the pandemic gave us a chance to sleep a lot, sleep much more. And I'm a big believer in sleep. But so it wasn't so much a change for me, but for many people, I think for the first time, they actually had a much better opportunity to sleep. But more seriously, I think it also, most importantly, I feel, highlighted the blindness we have in how we look at things. Every organization, every person, every family, we were blind as organizations to needs that were really right in front of us. So as an example, Achal, I mean, I'm sure you agree, during that period, we realized nature was so important for our well-being. So in fact, if you were to go to the parks, you see so many people walking as never before, encountering fresh air, knowing our community. So the sense of that community was really stronger than ever before. I mean, it's actually quite strange, right? That at a time when you are isolated, you actually end up being more conscious of the community. And clearly, the migrant workers was one major lesson for Singapore. we were just using migrant workers as workers, not as people. And then we start realizing, oh my gosh, how blind have we been to the plight of them? And therefore, of course, what it means to us is, it really hits you back in the face when you're blind to things around you. And I think there are many more blind spots that one can think of in our life, and mental health was one. We were all blind to mental health until the pandemic. Everybody starts realizing what blindness we have in our daily lives. So I think that is, to me, the most fundamental wake-up call. However, I'm afraid maybe we're going to get blind again. So I think this will be the challenge, and maybe it comes on to the second point, which we can discuss later, about effectiveness, because this blindness is going to limit us and hold us back. And this new age will call for much greater awareness, much greater vision of what the future should be, and to be very clear that there are many things we are not attending to properly. I mean, I just want to finish up on migrant workers. I remember raising this at the time I became chairman of, you call it president of NCSS, and talking about migrant workers. It was actually a clear delineation for both government and institutions like NCSS that actually attention to migrant workers is peripheral. It's not a priority. We only care for Singaporeans. We're not caring for people who live here as much. So I think these are the boundaries which actually get us locked into a certain frame of mind. So I hope we can shift out and be much more alert and agile.
Thank you. A very important notion or concept that our charities or IPCs need to look at. What are the blind spots that we are not seeing that could be right in front of us? Interesting. Okay, Hsieh, as we emerge from the pandemic and as we emerge into an uncertain, uncharted territory in the future, what do you see from your charity? What are some of the things that you think would be important for you?
So I think Denise and Phua said exactly what all of us, I think about. The specific challenges of COVID from our perspective was, first of all, fundraising, and the second was business continuity. Because what we realized is that we depended a lot on one source, which was face-to-face in terms of fundraising. And it hit us because suddenly you couldn't do face-to-face at all. And to Denise's point, use of technology in terms of online started to come into focus. A diversification of donors, like the corporate sector, became something important. And I think about that in terms of the sustainability of the organization, that as we move forward, we must be able to manage with much more diversification of funding than relying on just pockets of it. In terms of business continuity, clearly, you think about making an impact in terms of environment, you have to be physically present in many cases in order to do that. But again, with the use of technology, we were able to continue our work during COVID. It was challenging, but we learned new uses of technology, and we can talk a little more about that as we go along. But I would think about sustainability of funding through diversification and use of technology, both in terms of getting funding as well as making an impact.
Good, thank you. So I'm going to move very quickly. I'm trying to see whether we can get a little bit of wiggle time towards the end to ask if the floor has any questions. Was the whole notion of stakeholder engagement and collaborations that the President spoke about in her speech. And the other part that she talked about was also the impact assessment that we need to do. So I'm going to put these two items together and ask for your views. And maybe I can this time ask Phua, really, how important is this notion of impact assessment and collaborations with other charities, and maybe in terms of corporates even? So what's your own view on this?
Well, in fact, one of the blind spots we have actually forces you, and once you're aware of it, to actually look beyond. and see beyond. So you hear it now for companies, beyond profit. My question is for all of us here, we are doing good, but you and I know, well, there's this saying that path to hell is littered with a lot of good intentions. And I wonder that when we do good, what is beyond just doing good? Are we clear what doing good entails? And that seems like an abstract idea. So why don't I just bring back to some of the institutions I'm involved with today and how we forced to think beyond. So the Ministry of Health, and I'm involved with the one of the health cluster, is encouraging, in fact, pushing all the health groups to think beyond sick care to health care. And when you think about doing health care as opposed to sick care, then you actually have to engage the community. You have to collaborate with a lot of social organizations to deliver health care, because hospitals aren't able to deliver health care. And by that, I think when we know about health care, we're talking of well-being. You know, how do you keep people healthy? How do you actually, rather than them falling sick and then you attend to them? The whole idea is keep them healthy at home, in the community. And that requires you, and this comes to the point of collaboration, having to go beyond your usual mental model, your usual organization, and your own resources to actually reach out to do something far beyond what you've normally done. So the idea of going beyond is really what it is that I see as necessary for impact assessment. So in every impact assessment question, I hope that there will be, what do you see beyond? And I have to confess that, you know, myself, I was guilty of it. I was in Boon Chai's job many years ago. I recall 2005 receiving a letter from Kofi Annan. Of course, he wrote to many others all around the world, rallying organizations to actually see a greater social purpose in what they did. Now, I worked for a chairman at that time who is a purist, and he will always tell you, whatever you do, there's only one objective. And of course, you know, being a stock exchange and you're in the market, you're financial, what is your purpose? Your purpose is make money. It's all about money. Well, sadly, I'm ashamed to say I didn't respond to the call of Kofi Annan. So but today I think Boon Chai, obviously, payback time. So Boon Chai, I'm sure there's no need to even, you know, convince any of us here that business needs to see beyond profit. So I think these are the blind spots which we have, and once you are aware and you try and see beyond. And the other thing which I think which we should all be aware of too is, at our age, and many of us here in this room is, well, many younger, but nonetheless not far off, we are blind. We are blind to what the young can see. The young can see far further ahead. We're better at looking back, reflecting, reminiscing. But looking future, I'm afraid I don't think we have it. And I think in the area of sustainability, Greta Thunberg, some years ago, was screaming, shouting. We all thought she was a silly kid, right? How prescient was she about the world entering into an age of disaster? And today we're all waking up and say, oh, we've got to do something. We're late. We're slow.
Wow. Very, very, very deep thinking here. And I can't help thinking I'm going to be talking to my children and grandchildren tonight on these topics on social purpose in their lives. Okay, Hsieh, what do you think with regards to the impact assessment as well as the collaborations for your organization, for your charity? What would you say? What are some of your thoughts? And how do you think we can shape the strategy and activities?
I think I'll take a cue from what Phua said. I've been in the corporate sector all my life, and it's actually very liberating to be in the social sector because, as Phua said, in the corporate sector, you have to make money. There's no question, but you need to have a larger purpose. But here, all you should be doing and caring about is doing good. And in my mind, there's one word which looms large, are we trusted? So when we think about our stakeholders, and stakeholders I would talk about very broadly, whether they're donors, whether they are the people we are making an impact on, or the community, the government, everyone, we talk about collaboration. And in my mind, true collaboration is that you don't care about getting any credit at all. All you care about is creating the right impact. And I think if you think like that and you collaborate with everyone in order to create that impact, you gain trust. And when you gain trust, your brand starts to denote that trust. And therefore, when you step out and try to do good, whether it's getting funds in order to make the impact or seeking collaboration, it becomes very easy to do so. And I would say that our organization went through that evolution of getting out of the trap of, I would say, taking credit and thinking more about how can we create the maximum impact. And it doesn't matter if we are playing second fiddle to another charity, but wherever we can collaborate, we will collaborate. We'll collaborate with the government. We'll collaborate with their agencies, with other charities, with our stakeholders, and try to create the maximum good. So trust is how I think we should assess ourselves.
And the last third point that Madam President brought up was about having strong boards and having the right people on the board and board composition. So I'm going to start with you, Hsieh, with regards to, and one word that she said stuck out for me, and that word was sustainability. And sustainability can be defined in two different ways. Sustainability regards to the environmental sustainability, and of course, WWF has got that component inside. But the other part is the sustainability of boards and the composition of boards. Maybe I start with you on your comment on board diversity.
I think the President talked about gender specifically, and it's quite interesting. We have 50% of our board are women. And so we've got a 10-member board, and 5 of them are women. And the interesting thing is that we set no targets. We did not plan to get there. It was purely on merit that our NHRC was selecting people. And it turned out that we were able to get 5 extremely effective, talented, and very committed women on our board. 2 of them are President Award winners for the environment. One of them heads our NHRC and is very, very involved with people. One is a lawyer who has become a life coach and is invaluable in terms of stressful situations when it comes to people or to resolve difficult issues. And finally, there's one who's very, very committed and involved in both the financial and the social sectors. And so each of them, I'm proud to say, was there because of merit. We didn't think about bringing them on the board because they were women and because we were trying to hit a target. And it tells me that Singapore has a huge amount of talent in terms of women, and we should never make that an excuse to not have women on the board, because clearly without even trying, we were able to get to 50%. So that's the thought I have. In terms of sustainability, at the end of the day, when we think about a sustainable organization, you think about the diversity of thought and being able to hear different points of view and creating the best outcomes. And it's important, definitely, to have women on the board and hearing that point of view. But in the larger context of sustainability, I'd say that one of the things we're talking a lot about is climate. Everyone's talking about climate change, about the earth heating and keeping it down to 1.5 degrees. But we shouldn't lose sight of biodiversity. That's something which we need to think about, restoration of nature. That plays a very, very big role. And we need to make sure that we reclaim land for reforestation, reclaim the oceans, and we need to keep thinking and talking about that too.
if I may jump in, actually, as you were talking, Achal, on women on the board and how you arrive at this 50% figure quite naturally. But I heard you say too that the chair of the NRC is a woman. Perhaps that's the answer, that we should have chairs of NRC being, led by women. So I think then the instinct will come actually quite naturally.
When you look at your board, how would you look at bringing in new people? What are some of the skill sets, or what are some of the characteristics in identifying new board members? And to Achay's point about, yes, it has to be about meritocracy, it has to be about experience and skills, knowledge and experience and all the rest of it. But how would you identify a new board member, and what would be some of the things that you would share with others in actually transitioning the person into a board?
Well, first and foremost, I do believe in having the NRC, the nominating committee, chaired by women. I think it helps a lot. It breaks you out of the usual network you are in. You're plugged in, the so-called old boys network. Having a woman chair, that will actually break you away from that naturally. So I think that will be one move I think it's worth doing from time to time. It's not a rule, of course, but it's something I think which can break your mental pattern of working and thinking. For me, which I've touched on, I think age diversity is very important, apart from obviously the female diversity. So we got to be mindful of this. We are a graying society, and we're not, giving enough role to the young. And there's a danger that we're hanging on for too long, and therefore this whole diversity requires you to be very disciplined about rotating your board, which therefore, of course, allows you to bring in different skills, but also different age, because, you get older and, 10 years later, you're still there and you're 10 years older. So I think we just have to be so mindful of keeping board succession at the heart of how you actually, attain diversity. So that actually is, because without changing the board, you just can't have that diversity. So that refreshing must be done. I think sometimes we focus a bit too much on particular skills. I think skills are useful, but not the most crucial. It's the dynamics that you bring to a board. So why do you want diversity? You want the ability for people to be able to exchange ideas, challenge each other. That is an important quality. The ability to challenge, the ability to question, the ability to think differently. And from there, of course, you get this whole array of different thoughts. And that's why you have diversity. It's not a virtue in itself. It's something which actually helps you achieve beyond the greater purpose, the clarity you want.
Right. Thank you. Denise, your own perspectives on board compositions, some of the challenges you believe you face.
Maybe I'll take a step back first. I think factors like board diversity, staff even diversity and skill set, they are, to me, the enablers that basically help for the organizations I'm involved in, help me achieve my mission. So before all of that start, I think for me, mission stickiness is very important. So I need to be quite clear about exactly what's my major. So if my major is to ensure that whether is it the low-income group or the elderly or disabled or autistic, that, example, I want their lives potential maximized. I want, example, to live a dignified life where there is a basic, standard of living. Then if that indeed is my mission, then I would then look at several processes that are important. One of which is really to be able to constantly know what is happening. The landscape, if things have changed, if other people have come into the play, if, for example, in healthcare, healthy SG is now the big thing, or in disability, government has come in a lot. So I will need to first understand the landscape. And second, and then to see really what are some of the key focus priority areas I want to look at. And based on that, then I would then have a process by which I can identify my board members, my staff, to ensure that indeed with the right strategies, that I have execution, discipline, and excellence. To me, because of the internet, well, I mean, you go to internet, you search. In fact, I try to do this for this conference, this workshop, like the future of charity boards. Man, you have so many ideas there, So actually, ideas are all there already because of where we are in this time and age. But the key is really the currency of today is how do we then execute the right direction, the right thing we focus on, and execute in excellence. So that to me is what's needed. And then of course you assess and you evaluate and then you review again. So to me those are the processes. But therefore how my board comprises the diversity in terms of skill sets, knowledge, the temperament, the chemistry they have, the availability. So very busy people like you are usually not very available. If I'm lucky, I get 4 times a year, your time. But we also need a composition of a mixed configuration of people who are experts, the governance people, but also the passion people, the cause people, and different skills. And so I would look at board diversity that way and try to look at the differences in age, gender. I have no problem with women. More than half of my board members are women. Maybe it's disability, but and so I would then try to find people that way. And I do believe that age is important, but however, I have this view that some very old people actually think and behave very young. So I define them as young. Then some very young people are really quite stuffy, and it's like, man, you behave like you're a few decades older than you are. So I tend to look at age very different. I look at age in the mind. If you're curious, you're willing to learn, you're willing to listen, you're willing to think out of the box, then I think you are very special. So you might be young, but you're old, and you're old, you're young. So to me, age is that way. And some men behave like women, right? And some women behave like men. So I would look. But very key to this is because we know how available or unavailable board members are, I think the other input in the poll is very important, that we need to look for suitable staff. So in that way, we also need to then look at the landscape, what's needed, and find the right staff. So to me, headhunting for the right staff, especially the leaders, are so important. So I would put all of that in a bigger ecosystem. And then to me, board diversity and board approaching different board members and so forth, it will be, sorry to say this, means to an end. And the end must be what is in the mission all of us believe and want to make happen. So,
thank you.
I think she made a very important point, what I call, which wasn't mentioned earlier, passion quotient. This is crucial in a non-profit because we have no fees to pay anyone.
Yeah, totally. Understand. My panel speakers have made very many what I call provocative statements here. We've come to the end of our board chair conversations, but please join me in thanking our illustrious speakers today.